Chapter 101 Shocking Talent. Not the handmade noodles. Zhang Han shook his head with a chuckle and said, to do the fine hand-pulled noodles. Of course. Meng wants to eat the fine hand-pulled noodles, so the boss has definitely made it very special. Zhao Feng laughed on one side. I see. I'm just wondering why making noodles. It is Meng who wants to eat them. Liang Mengkai snorted. The boss basically granted Meng's all requests. But he didn't pay so much attention to them. Liang Mengkai knew that they weren't able to order food yet. Yes. Zhang Han nodded and his hands began to move. He grabbed the dough with his hands, and the aura continuously gathered on the dough through the palms. The arms were spread out and the dough was stretched into a cylinder as thick as an arm. As Zhang Han started, the eyes in the room gradually gathered. Every time Zhang Han started cooking, they always watched for a while, because Zhang Han's movements were simply artists for them. In the eyes of people, Zhang Han's hands moved at different frequencies. The dough on the palm began to rotate, and gradually, the dough was getting finer and finer while the rotation was getting quicker and quicker, like a vortex that gradually formed in the sea. Meanwhile, Zhang Han's aura was concentrated on the right hand, and the 5 fingers were making the fist. Under the spiritual guidance, a noodle like a little finger flew through the gaps of the fingers to the boiling pot. Were the noodles as thick as a finger? That was non-existent. What Zhang Han wanted to do was the fine noodles. As for how fine were the noodles, of course as fine as possible. Zhang Han moved his right hand in a circle with a quick melody. The noodles that passed through the fingers were constantly rotating forward. It was like holding a ribbon in his hand and waving it constantly to form a conical spiral. This was the case with the noodles at this time, and the noodles began to become finer as the rotation progressed. Little by little, until the time noodles fell into the boiling pot, the fineness of the noodles was like a hair. The noodles in the boiling pot broke off every 20 centimeters, which was a feat that could be accomplished under the control of spiritual power. In this way, the noodles were constantly flying, and the process of turning the dough into silk threads shocked everyone. It was well known that it was a trick when the boss was cooking, but it wasn't expected that he could dazzle others to such a degree. People around couldn't help marveling at this. How is this possible? God, it's terrible, right? How are the noodles pulled? This is the first time for me to see handmade noodles to be made in this way. Fuck. Look at the noodles. The fineness of the noodles is almost like the silk. It's amazing, and it's really amazing. The boss has such craftsmanship, which is not a feat for the average person. I am afraid that the first king of handmade noodles in the mainland is not as good as 1/10 of the boss. In the northern part of Shanbai, there was a ramen master who was very powerful. The noodles he made was as fine as the hair, but it was really exaggerated. In fact, the noodles were not as fine as the hair. But now, people looked at the faint noodle silk and were deeply shocked. This was really as fine as the hair, and they also didn't understand how this skill was going on. What they knew was the noodles flew as the vortex. How terrible and shocking it was. The one who was most shocking at this time was Zhao Feng. When Zhang Han's palms moved, his eyes became bigger and bigger, and eventually widened like a bull's eyes. The pupils in the eyes were shrinking as the noodles were formed, and the expression was like seeing something terrible. Zhao Feng stunned for a while, and suddenly he remembered a legend that the captain said, and he was shocked. What? Really? Is the boss? Zhao Feng was petrified, staring at Zhang Han with unbelievable eyes. It was remembered that when he was in the special forces, he fought with the captain privately for half an hour. Finally, he was easily taken down by the captain. Zhao Feng's defeat was very thorough, but he was convinced. However, the captain said, in this world, there is an invisible society, where there are countless formidable intellects. Even I can't touch the circle. Zhao Feng asked what was the invisible society, but the captain just laughed but did not say anything. When he left far away, he left a sentence, although you and I are powerful, we are still the frogs at the bottom of the well. The group of people is unimaginable beings, like martial arts. Martial arts, was it like the martial arts in the story where people had inner power? Zhao Feng speculated incredulously. Until now, he almost had forgotten that thing, but after seeing Zhang Han's talent and the scene in front of him, Zhao Feng couldn't help feeling shocked. He was faintly aware that the boss was the master of the invisible society. The boss was very likely to be the strong man with inner power. Otherwise, how could the boss reach this level? He wasn't able to do this with pure power. But what Zhao Feng didn't know was that his guess was almost close to the fact. Relatively speaking, Zhang Han, who was in Qi refining stage, was indeed the equivalent of a martial arts master with inner power, but in essence, the road Zhang Han practiced was the road to the immortality, which was the most orthodox road, while others were not necessarily the case, especially in this aura-exhausted Earth. Yes, nowadays, the Earth was developing faster and faster, the aura was gradually dissipating, and only some geomantic treasure ground would have the aura. Zhang Han certainly knew this. For another example, there was no aura. If the aura in the body was consumed, it couldn't be added. It could only rely on the formulas inside one's body to slowly cultivate. This method was a lot harder and slower to recover, which was also a very helpless fact. Take the eyes back to Zhang Han. The noodles rotated as the vortex flew into the boiling pot gradually. Quick as lighting, the whole process lasted only 1 minute. A pot of dough all turned into noodles that were as fine as the hair in a minute. If this was spread out, many people were not able to believe. Even the people in the restaurant didn't believe their eyes. It was just because this scene was too scary. Zhang Han gently exhaled with the noodles falling into the boiling pot. After finishing these noodles, it actually consumed more than half of the aura of Zhang Han. This half of the aura, even though Zhang Han practiced treasure-searching formulas, it would take him an afternoon to recover. While the noodles were cooking, Zhang Han started to cook the fried rice with egg for this noon. When his body moved, people regained consciousness. My God! Liang Mengkai screamed with dilated eyes at the side of the bar. Too handsome, the boss is too handsome, what shall I do? I am fascinated by you. Right, if I were a girl, I must pursue the boss. Zhao Du's tone turned into a soft voice because of the shock. At this time, Yu Qingqing did not care about Zhao Du's attitude, and her eyes gazed at Zhang Han. The admiration in the look was beyond words. In the face of praise, Zhang Han didn't have any expression and didn't respond. He still cooked the fried rice with egg as usual. He was just thinking in his heart, were my movements and skills just too exaggerated? This time making the noodles wasted more than half of his aura, although it was for the pursuit of speed. But watching these people's overreaction, it seemed that he had adopted the wrong way. All right, I'd better perform in a more normal way next time. Zhang Han shook his head slightly. While cooking egg fried rice, Zhang Han added salt and fragrant wood powder into the noodle soup. The egg fried rice and noodle soup finished soon. Zhang Han also made the potato chips and cucumbers one after another. People came to dinner as usual. Wow, what fine noodles, they are crystal clear and so beautiful like art. Liang Mengkai exclaimed while holding a bowl of noodle soup, and went back to her seat to prepare for a big meal. In fact, Liang Mengkai was also very fond of pasta. The last time she ate dumplings, the dumpling wrapper was soft and delicious, which made her have a good aftertaste. Now she had pasta, though it was light noodle soup, she still had to taste it first, even temporarily giving up the egg fried rice. And Zhao Du was a person who especially liked to eat spicy food. Over the years, his stomach had some small problems. Sometimes, eating some stimulating food would cause stomachache, but since he came to this restaurant, his stomach had never ached once. At this time, he would like to add some chili oil into noodle soup, but there was no preparation for the sauce, even soy sauce or vinegar, so he could only eat it like this. Noodles were Yu Qingqing's favorite, especially Anhui board noodles. But now there was noodle soup, she thought it was not bad. The three who first served noodles started to take action and enjoy lunch. They unanimously picked up a spoonful of soup and drank it after blowing it. The soup had a very strong taste of the flour. When the soup was drunk, only a sense of sweetness that couldn't be described was poured into their throat. At this moment, the soup seemed to have turned into a flow of fresh water, nourishing their bodies and mind and making them feel comfortable. Yummy! Liang Mengkai said with great admiration. Taste the noodles. Yu Qingqing couldn't help picking up the chopsticks and tried to pick up the noodles gently. Because the noodles were too fine, she was afraid to pinch the noodles off with a little force. But what was unexpected was that the fine noodles would be so strong. With her strength getting stronger, the noodles were still not broken. Yu Qingqing ate a big mouthful of noodles, and the noodles entered the mouth, making the mouthful of the noodles smell. Such fine noodles were not like a batter in her mouth, but made her feel that every noodle was flexible and strong. This taste was really a wonderful experience. It's the first time for me to know that the taste of noodle soup is like this. This is the real noodle soup. Yu Qingqing commented with eyes blurred, and then her movements accelerated. The people at the members' tables ate seriously even regardless of their images, causing the sound of eating noodles a little loud, which led people on the other side who ate egg fried rice to watch over. Chapter 102. Don't compare with this restaurant. Smells good. One of the men couldn't help swallowing and whispered, the noodles seem delicious. Yes. The manager of the next shop shook his head gently and said, they usually eat very elegantly, and this kind of eating manner is enough to explain everything. Unfortunately, I am not a member. The egg fried rice made by the boss is so delicious, the noodles should be delicious too. Look at their heads, and they will go into the bowl. Xiaom, who was standing opposite to the manager, grinned and said, sometimes the environment could also affect the minds of others, and seeing some people eating very happily would also affect the appetite of others. For example, if a person who didn't eat much had lunch with a person who ate very happily, he would unknowingly eat a few more mouthfuls. But now, all of those sat at the members' tables were swallowing noodle soup. When other people heard the sound of noodles entering their mouths, they urgently wanted to taste the noodle soup. But it was not allowed. They couldn't because they were not members. The crowd smiled bitterly in their hearts. Unexpected, Zhang Han had made a lot of noodle soup and had intended to offer non-members some noodle soup as well. After finished cooking, Zhang Han called Zhang Li and directly took the food to the upstairs to eat. Good. Liang Mengkai drank up the last mouthful of soup in the bowl and said, I can still eat another bowl. I can still eat a bowl and a half. Yu Qingqing also drank up all soup. After saying one sentence, she suddenly remembered something and added, oh, no, where's the cold dishes? Hey, forget to take it. The cold dishes are beside the boiling pot. Liang Mengkai patted her forehead. After serving the noodles, her eyes were attracted by the fine and crystal clear noodles. Even the cold dishes on one side were forgotten. So the two quickly got up and walked over to serve themselves each a bowl of noodle soup. After taking 2 cold dishes, they walked back. Try the shredded potatoes, sour and spicy, delicious. Liang Mengkai put the potatoes in her mouth, which was sour and tasty. Mengkai, taste the cucumber. Yu Qingqing just finished eating a piece of cucumber. Her eyes were bright, she liked this kind of vegetarian dish best. She bit off the crisp and delicious cucumber and was unable to extricate herself from the delicacy. The voices of the two reminded the other members. They got up quickly and took the cold dishes when they served the second bowl of noodles. The cold dishes were not too many, but everyone could have one dish. It seemed that the boss had specially reserved for them. At this time, not only the people on the first floor were amazed. On the second floor, Xian, Zif, Zhang Li and the little princess Meng Meng also ate happily, and the sounds of swallowing rang out one after another, just like playing a piece of music. Now, Zhang Han's cooking skill had completely conquered them. If the first meal was accidentally delicious, then the second and the third meal was inevitably tasty. As the saying went, to conquer his heart, conquer his stomach first. This sentence could reflect the artistic conception that food was the paramount necessity of the people. At this time, Zhang Han had completely conquered the stomachs of the diners and Xian and company. At the same time, the international friend with blonde hair waited for a moment at the door and entered the restaurant. He stood at the door and waited for the reception of the waiter, but after waiting for 2 minutes, no one paid attention to him. "Hello?" the blonde man asked tentatively. "What's the matter?" Liang Mengkai was eating the 1/3 of the noodles remaining in the bowl. Her stomach was about to swell, so the frequency of her eating noodles went down. She planned to taste the noodles slowly, then she heard a cry behind her. That was why she turned her head to answer the man. "Where are the attendants of the restaurant?" the blonde man asked hesitantly. His Chinese was a bit bad, but it could also make people understand clearly. After hearing the words, Liang Mengkai directly answered him using smooth English without further ado. "There are no attendants. There is a vacancy at the white dining table over there. Go to the counter and serve yourself." Liang Mengkai introduced it briefly, but she did not know that her words caused a huge wave in the blonde man's heart. Is this also called a restaurant? What the hell are the service and attitude? How did the owner open this restaurant? Why? The blonde man was already a little unhappy. The service was uppermost. This was especially true for the catering industry, but the rules of this restaurant had caused a little discontentment in the blonde man's heart. Bad service. Anyhow, he had lined up and already coming. He was going to taste the food here and see if it was worth so many people lining up. It turned out that when the blonde man ate the first mouthful of egg fried rice, he had already been shocked. For a moment, 10,000 bullet screams drifted through his heart, with the feeling of disbelief, suspicion, and exclamation mixing together. Finally, the only two kinds of feeling left were admiration and enjoyment. The blonde man ate very embarrassedly and even had some rice on his face. When others saw it, they smiled and shook their heads, understanding this kind of behavior. Because when they first came here, they also ate like this. A plate of egg fried rice was finished quickly. The blonde man looked at the empty plate, feeling a sense of loss. Have I eaten all the food in my plate? Didn't I just start eating? Did I have an illusion? His suspicion eventually turned into a sigh. Hey, how can the egg fried rice be so delicious? Magical China, magical restaurant. After saying that, he stood up and walked to the kitchen counter because he had just seen a great deal of noodle soup in the boiling pot next to the egg fried rice. After tasting the egg fried rice, although he wanted to eat another portion, he still planned to taste the noodles. Liang Mengkai, who was originally on one side, shook her head after hearing the murmurings of the blonde man, but when she saw the man serving noodles, she quickly interrupted. Hey hey hey! What are you doing? What's wrong? The blonde man stopped and said confusedly. Do you have a membership card? Liang Mengkai asked strictly. No, now non-members only have egg fried rice and milk, and others are served for members. This restaurant is much disciplined, so. Liang Mengkai reminded him. But there is still a great deal of noodle soup here. The blonde man's mouth twitched slightly. At the same time, he thought, oh, what restaurant rules? If the boss knows who I am, then he will be expected to ask me to taste his meal. No more buts, the rule is. Liang Mengkai just answered. Suddenly a voice came from the upstairs. What happened? Looking around, she saw Zhang Han slowly walking down. Boss. Liang Mengkai changed her expression, looking at Zhang Han with a smile, and said, this friend wants to eat noodle soup. I told him the rules of the restaurant. Do I behave well? Is there any reward? Reward? Zhang Han laughed and said, there is no reward, but for the noodle soup, everyone can eat. What? Liang Mengkai's expression became stiff. Swish. For a moment, those non-members looked towards them like hungry wolves. Can everyone eat? Liang Mengkai asked again. Yes. Receiving Zhang Han's affirmation, those people couldn't take care of the egg fried rice that they hadn't finished yet and went straight to the counter. They planned to serve a bowl of noodles first. Even if they didn't eat first, it felt cool to put the noodles aside. Having heard the sound of swallowing for a long while, they had been envious for a long time. Now hearing that they could also taste the noodle soup, the surprise and excitement in their hearts made them feel like they had won the lottery. It was the blonde man who served himself a bowl of noodle soup after hearing the words. Meanwhile, he began to size the boss up. There were some doubts in his heart. No one had tasted that before, but the rules were changed as soon as I came. Did he know my identity and want to please me? However, he would not speak his doubts out loud. His work was born to be secretive. Everyone served the noodle soup and returned to the table. After they had the first bite of the noodles, they couldn't help continuing eating. The sound of eating noodles kept ringing in the restaurant. Even the blonde man was immersed in the feast of the noodle soup. Delicious, very delicious, how could it be so delicious? This was also the only thought in people's minds. After the blonde man finished eating, he only felt the endless aftertaste. After seeing Zhang Han in the kitchen, he walked straight to the kitchen counter. "Hello, boss." The blonde man greeted him first. "Yeah?" Zhang Han responded without looking back. "The meal here is delicious. Why are egg fried rice and noodle soup so delicious? Is there any secret spice additive?" The blonde man asked doubtfully. This meal was the most delicious he had ever eaten. The deliciousness was somewhat outrageous. Where there was an anomaly, there was a devil, so he had some doubts in his heart. Because the ingredients here are the best. At this time, Liang Mengkai answered. "Ingredients?" The blonde man's expression was stiff. Obviously, this reason did not convince him. He said, "Excuse me, when I was traveling, I have also eaten a few meals in the Michelin restaurant. They used the world's top koshai hikari as well as the top quality rice, etc., but there was no such fragrance. Oh, don't compare the common things to our boss's rice. The rice of our boss is the best in the world." Zhao Du smiled and glanced at the man and replied with a disdain for the rice. The blonde man said, "Impossible, those are recognized by the people of the world." The blonde man questioned, "What is the use of recognition? Have you just tasted it?" Liang Mengkai frowned slightly and said, "Was this person still questioning after eating? Was he looking for trouble?" Besides, she had also eaten in many Michelin 3-star restaurants. The food there was much better than that in ordinary restaurants, but it was just so-so compared with the food in the restaurant of her boss. Seeing Liang Mengkai's expression, the blonde man didn't say anything more. He looked at Zhang Han and said, "Hello boss, let me ask one more question. I have also eaten Michelin's royal flour, but it seems not as delicious as the flour of your noodle soup. I just want to know if this is because of the ingredients, the seasonings, or the handcraft." At this time, Zhang Han smiled faintly. He turned and looked at the blonde man, saying, "Whether it's because of ingredients, seasonings or handcraft, it's the best here. The best, but I have eaten in a lot of Michelin restaurants. Why do you always mention Michelin?" Liang Mengkai snorted and said, "I will tell you that, Michelin is just a joke in the eyes of this restaurant. The two cannot be compared. You should not talk nonsense." Chapter 103 Food Agents Comment. Although the blonde man's words were not malicious, it felt that he was complimenting Michelin. The question in his tone seemed to be saying that this restaurant was not comparable to others, which made Liang Mengkai unhappy, so she directly retorted, "That's okay." The blonde man smiled and took a cup of milk and walked back to the table. When he was sitting, he took out his mobile phone and recorded on the notebook. Meng's Leisure Restaurant. Food, 100. Dining environment, 60. Service, 30. Wine, 0. This was the comment on this restaurant. 100 points was the full score, and 60 points was the passing score. It could be seen from this that this person was a gourmet critic. He was the Michelin's food agent. The Michelin restaurant was the restaurant of the Michelin Red Collection for restaurants around the world. It was also a very authoritative restaurant in the world with high honors, and countless restaurants wanted to receive this honor. Because of the star level, it represented both fame and wealth. The Michelin restaurant was judged by getting at least one representative of Michelin's knife and fork mark. This mark was the basic standard for the Michelin guide to the restaurant, ranging from the highest 5 sets of knives and forks to a set. This was to show the comfort of the restaurant. 5 sets represented a luxurious traditional style, 4 sets for supreme comfort, 3 sets for very comfort, 2 sets for comfort and 1 set for basic comfort. The Michelin star level was judged by a group of screened food agents who were called inspectors. Every time an inspector went to a restaurant or hotel to judge, he needed to conceal his identity to sneak into the accommodation and comment. The scoring items they needed to refer to included food in the restaurant, 60%, dining environment, 20%, service, 10%, and wine, 10%. Originally, this blonde man was going to someone else's restaurant, but when he saw the popularity of Zhang Han's restaurant, he couldn't help walking over and planned to taste the food to see if the restaurant had the taste of a star-rated restaurant. It was also difficult to rate the Michelin-starred restaurant. It was judged by a number of food agents and 12 visits a year, which could be finalized after review by Michelin headquarters. Because of the complexity and seriousness, it was authoritative. The star-rated restaurant had a total of 3 grades, and 1 star represented a good restaurant worth parking to taste. The 2 stars represented the first-class cooking, providing excellent food and wine. It was worthwhile to detour, but the cost was not low. The 3 stars, the highest-rated restaurant, represented the perfect and top-notch culinary cooking, and it was worth a special trip to enjoy the superb cuisine, the selection of fine wines, the zero-defect service, and the elegant dining environment. But it cost a lot of money. However, the Michelin restaurant, in China, was only found in Hong Kong and Macau, and there was no Michelin-starred restaurant in the mainland. It might also be because the food was too various and complicated so that the food agents did not know where to start with. As a food agent, the blonde man's work was also a kind of travel and enjoyment. After recording the notes, he took a sip of milk, slurping, slurping. When drank the first sip, the blonde man couldn't stop himself. He was a little bit stunned after drinking off. So he picked up the phone again and felt that the comment was just not realistic, and there was no remark, so he rewrote it. Food, 1000, note, super delicious, unimaginable taste, taste buds of supreme enjoyment, more delicious than most 3-star restaurants. Dining environment, 50, note, the facade was small, the location of the diners was crowded, and the comfort was unqualified with the stranger in the same table. Service, 20, note, the boss's service was bad, making the diners to serve and pay themselves, and the restaurant adopted the membership system, and what the non-members could eat was less. The top 10 membership cards were 1 million each and the last 10 were 10 million each. Wine, 0, note, no drinks available. This experience was very special for the blonde man, and the meal was very delicious. It was too delicious to let him give a score 10 times higher than the full score. In the ordinary people's view, it was a family-friendly restaurant environment, but in his eyes, it was disqualified and only got 50. The 20 of service was still a friendship. If the food was not really delicious, he wanted to give 0. The food was delicious and the service was not good, which made the blonde man feel a little uncomfortable. He obviously wanted to praise this restaurant, but he couldn't tell lies, otherwise, the other agents would make fun of him when they came here. As a food agent, he was also very professional, and it was impossible to disclose to the restaurant staff that he was a Michelin food agent. However, looking at the attitude of the boss and the diners, it seemed that they would not take care of him, even if he told them his identity. Since when had Michelin become unpopular? There were some doubts in the blonde man's heart. To know that it was a world-class authoritative restaurant rating, if a restaurant was judged, the turnover of the restaurant would soar, which meant gaining both fame and wealth. But it seemed the boss of this restaurant didn't have any idea. Didn't he have a great ambition? Even the payment, he let the diners put their money at the bar, and did not ask the diners whether to pay by card or cash. This service was simply bad. If the food was extremely delicious, the blonde man must jump and leave some disdained words, but now he was reluctant to leave. It was a pity that if the environment and service here were like 3-star restaurant, then this restaurant was definitely one of the best star restaurants in the world. The blonde man sighed, and when he wanted to sit down for a rest, a customer in front of him who had just come in coughed softly and said, "Brother, you have been sitting here for a long time, are you still eating or not? There are a lot of people waiting in line outside, please don't waste others' time. Don't you know the rules of this restaurant? Non-members should not rest for more than 5 minutes after meals. Please respect everyone's feelings, thank you." The blonde man glimpsed a little, and then his face became red. What happened? As soon as I had finished the meal, I'm kicked out of here? For a time, his emotions were extremely complicated, shocked, angry, depressed, and confused. At the same time, there was also a shame that he really delayed others' time. His expression was stiff and his lips squirmed a few times. In the end, he did not say anything. He stood up suddenly and walked over to the computer counter to ask Zhang Han, "How much is the noodle soup?" However, in his sight, the boss went straight to the stairs and went to the second floor. "What? Ignored me? What attitude? What did you mean?" The blonde man's heart suddenly burst into flames. He stood here with his eyes staring and didn't know whether to stay or leave. He was completely confused. This was not because Zhang Han ignored him, but because he did not notice him. There were so many people in the restaurant. He didn't call boss first, so Zhang Han did not know that he was asking. "Noodle soup is 300, and you calculate the price of the rice you have eaten yourself, then put the money there." Fortunately, Liang Mengkai knew the price of the restaurant. Since the noodle soup was sold out, it must be the same price as the egg fried rice. The blonde man licked his mouth after hearing the words, and he didn't say anything for a while. He took out the wallet and counted a dozen of them directly on the bar. He turned and left cleanly. Bad, bad, it's just bad. What is this service? The customer is God. But why he is like God in his restaurant? Unreasonable. Never come next time. With this attitude, I'll never come even the food is delicious. After leaving the restaurant, the blonde man muttered for a while and returned to his accommodation. He was used to having noon naps, but he didn't fall asleep this afternoon. When he closed his eyes, the scene in that restaurant came to his mind. What was more interesting was that at night, he was going to work in another restaurant, but when he went out, he said hesitantly, "Huh? What is the taste of fried rice and noodles? It seems that I eat a little quickly at noon, now I forget the taste. What should I do? No, I need to taste again." So at 6 o'clock in the evening, he came to the restaurant and lined up to eat. Although he said no, his body was very honest. Of course, this was what happened afterward. The sight returned to the restaurant. After the blonde man left, the people behind knew that the restaurant had new food. Almost everyone had noodle soup, even those who didn't like noodle soup, and they couldn't help serving themselves a meal with the sound of eating noodles. As soon as they ate, they had known why people didn't care about table manners. The taste was too delicious, not only delicious but also very tasty. The noodles slippery, moist, gluten, and taste, were the enjoyment for people's taste buds. On the second floor of the restaurant. Ouch, I'm stuffed. Are these noodles? The taste is indescribable, brother-in-law. My admiration for you is like the flowing water which never ends. You are so amazing. Zif said with a little laziness. After she finished eating, she was soft on the sofa. She ate so much that she felt weak, but she looked at Zhang Han with much admiration. "Oh, I failed to control myself either, I'm too stuffed." Zhang Li fell next to Zif with happiness. So delicious, this is the best pasta I have ever eaten since I was a child. Ha, you are scheming, you just want to conquer us by delicious food. Xian's beautiful eyes looked at Zhang Han with glimmer. She also ate 2 bowls of noodle soup. After eating happily, she felt more relaxed. She leaned back on the sofa to take a break and didn't want to move. Meng Meng fell on his slender legs. She patted her little belly and said with her mouth beeped, "All up, Papa, ha, it is because of you that Meng Meng's belly gets bigger. What should I do? I'm going to be ugly. I don't want to become like this." Meng Meng patted her stomach. It was a little bulging, which shocked her. The little princess was very narcissistic. That's okay. When Zhang Han saw Meng Meng, he couldn't help smiling and said, "The food in Mount New Moon is digestive, so Meng Meng, you don't worry about being fat. Of course, do not sleep after eating like a pig." Chapter 104. He kissed me. No, Meng Meng is not a piglet, but Papa is. Humph, I don't like Papa. Meng Meng said unwillingly. She, the little princess, loved beauty very much. Okay, Zhang Han chuckled and begged for mercy. Well, it's Dad's fault. Meng Meng is not a piglet but Dad is. Ho ho, Papa is a piglet. Meng Meng waved her little arms jovially but felt something wrong after a few childish words. In the next breath, she said with a soft voice, "Handsome Papa is not a piglet at all. Your Papa is not a piglet, so who is?" Ziffa played with Meng Meng and asked simultaneously. "You are. Auntie Fei Fei is a piglet. You lie here as soon as you finish the meal. You are lazy." Meng Meng replied seriously. Zif's face was as hard as stone on the spot, as if a few black lines floated across her forehead. Ha ha. Xian and Zhang Li burst out laughing. "Well, Meng Meng, Auntie Fei Fei doesn't like you anymore if you act in this way. Give you another chance to say, who is a piglet?" Zif stared at Meng Meng and asked with exaggerated expressions. "Ha." Not being afraid of Zif, Meng Meng burrowed into Xian's arms and said, "It's Auntie Fei Fei. Auntie Fei Fei is exactly a piglet. Fine, let's see how Auntie Piggy punishes you." Zif's arms played on Meng Meng's body, provoking bursts of laughter in the house. Although this restaurant was open for an hour, it took more than 2 hours for diners from queuing to leaving. What was more, after several days' preparation, people who came to eat almost have their own circles nowadays, which were set up for the establishment of Zhang Han's restaurant. They sometimes came in groups and had a lot of communication groups named Meng Meng Restaurant Communication Group. Most of the topics were focused on food. Therefore, the noodle soup newly appeared at noon, which was spread by the people who had eaten it, evoked a strong response. Mainly due to the amount of milk, per capita consumption in the restaurant was over 1,000 yuan. Many people drank more than 3 glasses of milk at every meal on account of small cups. They were out of milk after a few swallows. It was definitely not enough to drink. They also felt vigorous a whole day long after eating in the restaurant, but due to the relatively high consumption, most people couldn't come here for every meal. The news of the noodle soup, like a hurricane, swept through the friend circles of these people, resulting in a large number of people being ready to come to the restaurant for a try. There were even quite a few people called their colleagues, classmates, and roommates who hadn't eaten to go together. All of a sudden, the restaurant seemed to usher in an extraordinary hot scene. After the lunch break, Zhang Li and Zif volunteered to tidy up the upstairs, while the downstairs was cleaned by Zhao Feng and Zhao Du. "Oh, Papa, Mama, aren't we going to the ocean park?" Meng Meng suddenly thought of the journey she looked forward to all day, so she immediately sat up and asked with her clear wide eyes. "Yes." Xian nodded her head slightly, took a look at the time and said, "We have rested up, so shall we go now?" Xian turned her eyes to Zhang Han, in a tone of inquiry, just like a well-behaved wife who was about to ask for her husband's advice before going out. At this time even Xian didn't know her attitude toward Zhang Han was quietly changing. "So, Zhang Han looked at Meng Meng with a smile, drew out the voice and said, "Go? Okay, okay, let's go to Ocean Park, ho ho." Meng Meng was really happy, keeping on jumping on the sofa. So the family of three was going to go out to play. Then the problems had arisen. "Zhang Han, what do you think I should wear?" As Xian walked towards the bedroom, the words came out of her mouth naturally, "Whatever." Zhang Han replied, "You are perfunctory. If I am recognized, we would be surrounded. I have to make up first to simply disguise." Xian said with a snort, "Make up?" Zhang Han looked at the time. It was already 2 o'clock. He was afraid it was a waste of time for Xian to make up. Anyway, Zhang Han stopped at the beginning of the sentence. He just wanted to say anyway no one knew her at present. But Zhang Han thought if he said that, he must receive Xian's disdain. Hence, he added a turn and said, "All you have to do is to wear a hat. Will that do?" Xian hesitated to say. In her mind, although she was not popular now, people knew her, it must be troublesome to be recognized. "Well, I'll make you up." Zhang Han thought of the useless copper coin. With the phantom copper coin, it would be easy to change Xian's appearance slightly in others' eyes. "You? Forget it." Xian shook her head, showing an expression that she didn't believe in him at all. "Are you kidding? How would he, a stalwart man, make up? Just to make up?" Zhang Han rashly grabbed Xian's hand towards the bedroom. Swish. Xian was surprised at first, then her face flushed in a moment. How bossy he was. Xian wanted to draw her hand back but did not act finally, allowing Zhang Han to pull her hand to walk towards the bedroom. Oh, what are you doing? You go to the bedroom to do bad things in the daytime, it's too ashamed. As soon as Zif went upstairs, she saw this scene and started to cry. She now sincerely hoped that Xian and Zhang Han could be together, not only because Zhang Han conquered her stomach, but also that was good for Meng Meng. Zif was very fond of Meng Meng. Meanwhile, she considered that the more they contacted, the more they looked like a couple. Ho ho. Zhang Li did not say anything but just covered her mouth and chuckled. "They're not doing bad things," said Meng Meng as she bounced on the sofa. "Papa is gonna make Mom up." Oh. Zif bantered in a voice dripping with sarcasm. "They have reached the level of makeup, how fast?" Hearing the commotion behind, Xian did not pay attention to it, even did not lift her head, because her face turned red with embarrassment. This charming look of Xian was just as beautiful as a blooming flower. After entering the bedroom, Xian shut the door, but she immediately regretted doing this. It seemed that she and Zhang Han truly would do some shamefaced things in the bedroom. The very thought made Xian pull her hand back. She gave Zhang Han a stare with beautiful eyes and pouted, "It's all your fault, they all make jokes of me, so what?" Zhang Han did not know whether to laugh or cry. He just wanted to make her up casually to save a little time, not doing anything else. "Give me your cosmetic bag." Zhang Han looked at Xian's some bashful appearance, funnily said, "I make you up simply and others will not recognize you. Let's hurry up, or Meng Meng won't have a good time." "How can you only take care of Meng Meng?" Xian said sourly, intending to ask why he did not treat her like this, but she felt as if she had quarreled from jealousy with her daughter. Therefore, she quickly stopped talking and changed the topic. Do you really know how to make up? Why would I lie to you?" Zhang Han slightly shook his head and said, "Take the cosmetic bag, and you'll know whether I can make up or not later." "All right." Xian responded with her lips pursed, then she turned to her suitcase to take out the cosmetic bag. "Come and sit here," said Zhang Han as he walked to the edge of the round bed and patted the mattress in front of him. Xian came and sat down sensibly, worrying about Zhang Han's skill in the mind. When Zhang Han got the cosmetic bag in this hand, he took out an eyebrow pencil. Xian felt he might really know how to make up for his relatively regular posture. But, as Zhang Han's eyes swept over and his body got closer and closer to her, Xian suddenly became nervous and only felt that her heart was leaping. "So let's get started, your face should come up a little bit," Zhang Han reminded, holding the eyebrow pencil. Xian slightly twisted her lips and subconsciously moved her head closer. With the proximity of distance, Xian could even feel Zhang Han's breath. Feeling a breath of male virility against her face for a moment, she could not help closing her eyes tensely. Her long eyelashes constantly trembled and anyone could see her tension at this time. "Take it easy, don't be nervous, it will be all right soon," Zhang Han said softly and gently lifted Xian's chin up with his left hand. At the same time, he let her face slightly raised. They were face to face, and Zhang Han slightly froze when he looked at Xian's delicate face. Looking from Xian's forehead, eyes, nose, and gradually to her soft lips, Zhang Han could not help thinking of the passion of that night, which led to an impulse to kiss her. Zhang Han just looked at her for a while. Xian gradually found something abnormal and slowly opened her big eyes. When she discovered Zhang Han's eyes focused on her red lips, her heart beat faster and she got more and more anxious. You start," Xian reminded him with her voice as low as the mosquito, then closed her eyes promptly. "Well, okay, here I go." Zhang Han coughed softly and prepared to start. While Xian closed her eyes, she let out a tender and vague hum using her nose. Tension made her complexion more and more ruddy, which was so tempting. He wants to kiss me." At that moment, Xian saw what he was thinking from Zhang Han's eyes. That was why she was so nervous. In fact, there was a problem that she did not know how to deal with it, and she just felt a little giddy and confused. What should I do if he kisses me? Should I say no? I can't just accept it. But suddenly, she felt something touch her lips while she was letting her imagination run wild. Xian's delicate body trembled in a twinkle with a tingling feeling welled up in her heart. He kissed me. Just as the thought was about to come up, something on her lips abruptly moved. As the feeling of touch deepened, Xian eventually knew what it was. Chapter 105. At last we had meat to eat. She suddenly opened her big eyes, and the tension in her heart totally vanished to be replaced by questions. "Zhang Han, what's the matter? Don't move, it's going to be crooked." Zhang Han's left hand tightened Xian's chin. "What, you take his eyebrow pencil?" Xian's eyes containing anger fixed on Zhang Han. "Bastard, he actually took me to practice. Ahem, got it, I will finish in a minute, okay?" Zhang Han was slightly embarrassed. He didn't know anything about cosmetics. After knowing what in his hand was an eyebrow pencil, he then used it to draw on Xian's eyebrows. Xian thereupon glanced at him ruthlessly and did not say any more. She closed her eyes again, throwing the handle after the blade. After this small episode, however, Xian felt a sense of relief. She was so nervous that she seemed to be suffocating right now. "Sure, Xian, you are so humiliating." Xian silently cursed herself. "Okay, let's see." Soon, it was only a minute before Zhang Han opened his mouth. When Xian looked at herself through the mirror, her eyes gradually became round. "Zhang Han." A very sharp and murderous sound spread all over the restaurant. When driving to the ocean park, Zhang Han always inadvertently put on a smile. Instead of using the phantom copper coin, he used the power of it while applying cosmetics. Just like painting, he succeeded after a few strokes. In the back seat, Xian slightly pouted and was not very happy. The reason? Seeing her downward sloping eyebrows and the ugly cant eye, everyone would understand. Xian loved to look beautiful, so she simply could not stand Zhang Han's poor makeup skill. But she was compelled to go out by Zhang Han and directly picked up Meng together, leaving no time for her to fix her makeup. "Bastard, humph, I will never trust him again." Xian was so annoyed that she talked out her thoughts in the mind. Meng was surprised and asked doubtfully, "Mama, what is a bastard? Is it something delicious?" After taking a while to collect herself, Xian gave Zhang Han a severe look when seeing his smile and said, Your papa is, Meng Meng. We should pay less attention to your papa in the future. He is a big liar. No, papa is not a liar. Meng Meng resisted. Little traitor. Xian snorted and pinched the dainty nose of Meng Meng. Oh, it's almost crooked. Meng Meng rubbed her nose with small palms and said faintly, Mama, papa is not a liar. You can't say so. Papa is so great and makes such delicious food. Ha. Seeing the look of Meng Meng, it seemed that if Xian did not give in, she would be serious to this problem all the time. Considering this, Xian shook her head helplessly, then she said both angrily and amusingly, Okay, okay, your papa is not a liar, he is the best. Mama is also super good. Meng Meng's little body squeezed into Xian's arms, acting like a spoiled child. In laughter, they arrived at the ocean park. After getting off, Xian put on a cap and put the brim of it very low. This time it was not because she was afraid of being recognized, but she thought the makeup on her face was too ugly. Just entered the ocean park. They three rode the Ferris wheel again. This time, Meng Meng was still in Zhang Han's arms, and Xian and Zhang Han sat next to each other. When the wheel reached the height, Xian and Meng Meng were still afraid. Xian's hands involuntarily grabbed Zhang Han's arm and her body also gradually leaned on him. With Zhang Han, she felt much better than the last time. Meng Meng had a wonderful time the whole afternoon. By the time they got back to the restaurant, it had been nearly 5:30, and some people had already come here, but these people who came so early were all non-members. As for members, they did not need to stand in line and certainly did not have to wait in advance. Zhang Han sent Xian and Meng Meng to the upstairs, and then he set out to Mount New Moon. He took 2 native chickens, some eggplants and cucumbers. He planned to make braised chicken chips with brown sauce, cucumber with garlic sauce and braised eggplant with soybean paste. When Zhang Han drove back to the restaurant with ingredients, he was amazed. In front of the restaurant, 30 small chairs were completely full, and there still stood nearly 20 people. Although the number was not big, it was spectacular in this area. Why there are so many people? Zhang Han was a little surprised, but he figured out when he heard what they said as he got out of the car. On seeing Zhang Han, these people all looked at him, and the people in the queue in the back said anxiously, Boss, I especially asked for leave to have a meal here, but there are too many people in line. Can you do a little bit more? Yes, yes, I heard the new noodle soup, you must let us have a try. Boss, please, it took me an hour to get here. Their words were full of urgency. Even if there were a lot of people in front of the line, they did not choose to leave but wait for the boss. I'll make more, Zhang Han answered casually and walked to the restaurant. His words made these people so excited. Thank you, boss. The boss is so nice. Hooray. The crowd cheered as if they had won a battle. A man with blonde hair who sat in front of the line witnessed everything. It was incredible for him. When did the owner of the restaurant earn gratitude from diners for making a little more food? In general, they ordered a twill. Oh God, what an amazing restaurant. But in the meantime, the blonde man took it for granted. After all, the food here was so delicious that even he, a food agent, had been conquered, let alone others. Regardless of these, when Zhang Han walked into the restaurant, the manager of the store next door was already sitting at the white table, waiting to eat. Take these 2 chickens and clean them up. Zhang Han handed over the bag containing 2 chickens. The manager looked pleased. He directly took the bag and opened his mouth in advance. Boss, don't give me money, I'm sorry about what happened last time. Then he turned and rushed out. This time, he was going to supervise his men to let them clean the chickens up thoroughly. Liang Mengkai and some other people were enlightened by this scene. Boss, are we going to have meat to eat? Liang Mengkai asked in a hurry. Hardly had he opened his mouth when Yu Qingqing, Zhao Du, Sun Donging, and his family, as well as Wang Qing and his wife, looked over. Of course, Eating vegetables every day was not good. Even the people who did not have a passion for meat would have a meat meal at intervals. Moreover, there were not many people who did not like meat. Some people did not like eating fat, some did not like pure meat, they liked meat with bones, such as spare ribs. Some people liked chicken wings and chicken legs, while others liked to eat viscera, such as chicken hearts, pork livers and so on. Furthermore, the most famous steaks in Western restaurants were really popular. There were always a few kinds of meat that the particular persons would also love. Zhang Han nodded slightly in the attention of the crowds. There were 2 chickens, and it was not a big deal to give them a few. After all, they are members who deserved preferential treatment. Zhang Han's affirmation made their eyes filled with strong eagerness. Great, we have meat to eat at last, ha ha ha. Yu Qingqing laughed loudly. She was a real carnivore. Though the others said nothing, it was all in their eyes. It was the first time they had enjoyed meat in the restaurant. After boiling the rice, Zhang Han planned to cook a pot of egg fried rice for the diners and make a pot of noodle soup at the same time. Then he prepared the dinner they were going to eat. When all the ingredients were ready, the manager of the restaurant next door brought back 2 chickens. As knife rose and fell, the chicken was cut into pieces by Zhang Han. This time he was ready to make braised chicken chips with brown sauce, not adding ingredients like potatoes. It was a pure meat dish. Braised chicken chips with brown sauce was also a common Chinese dish. Its cooking procedure was not difficult, but the ingredients were strictly required, and the operation was fine. It was a necessary dish for restaurants. In fact, as long as you, generally speaking, followed the steps of food software to cook meat dishes, they would also taste good. But in order to taste better, as mentioned above, whether the process, the ingredients, or the technologies, such as heat control, should be mastered by experienced people. Braised eggplant with soybean paste, which was similar to braised eggplant, was simple to make and suitable for all ages. It was also a common dish with good taste. Let alone cucumber with garlic sauce. It was crisp and delicious, and they, including Liang Mengkai, had tasted at noon. Zhang Han was ready to cook. He finished egg fried rice at first, put it on the counter, and began to boil noodle soup. Look, the boss picked up the dough, and the show is about to begin, Liang Mengkai said with expectation. At this time, people in the restaurant all concentrated on Zhang Han, and even 2 guests who had seen at noon prepared to take out their mobile phones to record the fantastic skill. Soon, under the crowd's gazes, Zhang Han held the dough in his hands. It was time to start. The people gradually held their breath. However, Zhang Han calmly put the dough on the panel. What, boss, why don't you act? Liang Mengkai asked. Take your time, Zhang Han replied calmly. Oh. Liang Mengkai nodded. Actually, she still wanted to see the boss's handsome look when he cooked, but it didn't matter. Good taste was enough. Zhang Han cut the dough into strips with a knife, pulled them into threads carefully and threw them into the pot. Soon, a pot of noodle soup was ready as well. Non-members prepared for dinner in succession. The people such as Liang Mengkai also filled their bowls with egg fried rice and noodle soup. When they put the bowls on the table, there was no one to eat, though the mixed savory smell of egg fried rice and noodle soup let them feel hungry. But for the sake of more food, they endured. Chapter 106 The Power of Braised Chicken. As the rice was about to be cooked, a pot of voluptuous braised chicken was finished. Although the amount of the 2 chickens was quite large, there was no need to use the last tureen. Instead, he put them in a big basin. Without a range hood, the mellow smell of chicken quickly lingered in the air. This smell, the fragrance gradually made them stop eating. All their eyes were fixed on the appetizing chicken. The oily meat, as well as its attractive fragrance, made their mouths water. Even one of them, who was eating noodle soup, slobbered along the noodles with a greedy look. Oh, my God, the smell is too alluring for me to bear. Yu Qingqing stared and looked upset. Why was she upset? because she wanted to eat chicken immediately and even tensed herself, intending to run at tremendous speed at the moment the boss asked them to eat. Liang Mengkai, generally speaking, was the first member, but now, whatever, Yu Qingqing had forgotten everything because of this chicken. She was in a state of bewilderment and even did not know who was she and where was she. The others, however, were no better than her. They kept eyes on the braised chicken placed on the counter like hungry wolves. All waited for the moment when they could taste it. The other two dishes were ready soon. At last, Zhang Han calmly picked up a pair of chopsticks and flipped over the chicken in the views of the crowds. What's the boss doing? All the people were puzzled, but they understood the next moment. They saw Zhang Han calmly picking a wing, then the wing tip, a drumstick out from the chicken. He put them in a small bowl. For a moment all the people went crazy. People were keen on chicken drumstick and wings. These two parts of chicken were the best, for the two parts moved more normally and were softer. Furthermore, the chicken wings were still a kind of mussels, which were resilient and tasted good. Cola chicken wings, for instance, was popular and loved by the mass of people. Soon, under the crowd's eyes, 1 wing, 2 wings, 3 wings, 1 drumstick, 2 drumsticks, 3 drumsticks. Boss. Yu Qingqing saw Zhang Han picking up the last drumstick, letting out a cry all of a sudden. Zhang Han looked towards her with puzzlement. Although others understood her more or less, they did not know what she was going to say. Boss, brother, I want to eat a chicken drumstick. Yu Qingqing flushed, feeling a little embarrassed to ask for food, but she couldn't help it. The thought of having no chance to eat a drumstick made her very uncomfortable. Zhang Han nodded. Under several people's gazes, he was still very calm to put the last chicken drumstick into the small bowl. How indifferent he was, damn it, an evil capitalist. Yu Qingqing was somewhat disappointed, while Zhang Han considered it was necessary to be better for these members. So, he turned to Yu Qingqing and said with a chuckle, "Next time, I'll make you a whole chicken next time." Yu Qingqing cheered up the instant she heard these words. This feeling of loss and gain was too stimulating to her heart. Boss, chicken drumsticks are not available. So can you leave me a wing? I want to eat. Seeing Zhang Han picking up the last chicken wing, Liang Mengkai called out anxiously. The boss and she shared joys and sorrows. That was to say, she had gone to Mount New Moon with Zhang Han to play with Meng Meng. She deemed that her relationship with Zhang Han was the best of these present and she was the first member. Besides, she adored him. By right of this intention, he should leave her a chicken wing. It was happy to imagine, but the reality was so cruel. This time, Zhang Han did not even lift his head but directly took the chicken wing and said, "No way. Chicken wings are all Meng Meng's. Ho ho." Yu Qingqing sobered down, looking at Liang Mengkai who was dumbfounded, giggling. Wretched boss, I don't love you anymore." Liang Mengkai bit her lip and snorted dramatically. However, she did not dwell on it. She knew that she definitely had no chance to taste if Meng Meng loved to eat, but she was really desirous to eat chicken wings. Under their greedy gazes, Zhang Han took pieces of good meat into a small bowl and put the meat, which was as heavy as a chicken, into a plate. He then went upstairs carrying a dish of braised eggplant with soybean paste, a dish of cucumber with garlic sauce, as well as 5 bowls of rice. Whoosh! Zhang Han's steps seemed like a signal gun for the 100-meter race. No sooner had he left than all the members sitting at the table stood up and walked towards food. They, however, were of quality after all. Except Yu Qingqing grabbed Liang Mengkai's seat. Everyone else queued up according to their member numbers. Yu Qingqing, you're so ungrateful. It is I who bring you here for dinner. Liang Mengkai grunted behind Yu Qingqing with her eyes moved on the braised chicken. Liang Mengkai sniffed gently and closed her eyes. Then she sighed. Wow, the smell is so fragrant. The smell of chicken made people drool. Yu Qingqing in the front did not hesitate, directly using a small plate to dish up 1/3 of the chicken. Nevertheless, She had no desire to stop and could not control her hands. When she took almost half of the chicken, Wang Qiang and Sun Ming behind could not resist coughing. Old as they were very mature. Sun Ming, especially, who was seriously ill and stood aloof from everything, still could not help reminding her that the people behind would definitely have no chance to eat the chicken according to what she did. Even Liang Mengkai felt so ashamed of Yu Qingqing that she patted Yu Qingqing on the back and said, "It's enough, you have almost taken half." "Ah?" Yu Qingqing suddenly froze and looked back at the crowd with a red face. She quickly put the chicken in her plate back and said, "Oh, sorry, I just lost my memory and couldn't control myself." The crowd smiled and shook their heads. All of them could understand her amnesia for fear that no matter who dished up first would be confused. In the end, Yu Qingqing took about 1/10 of the amount, only 4 pieces. That's obviously not enough. Yu Qingqing was somewhat disappointed. She walked back to the table after taking the other 2 dishes. "It's my turn, it's my turn." Liang Mengkai let out a cry of joy, taking 1/10 of the amount by means of her strong willpower and walking back with the other 2 dishes. Now the 9 members all had braised chicken and Wang Qiang, who took at last, got 2 more pieces. All the people returned to their seats. "Have a taste." Yu Qingqing quickly picked up a piece of chicken. It was a lump of tempting lean meat with the aroma which was dark red like soy sauce and had a layer of chewy skin. Yu Qingqing closed her eyes after a bite and felt the pure flavor of the chicken filling her mouth. "Oh my god, it smells good. How can chicken smell so great?" Yu Qingqing exclaimed repeatedly. "That's right, it is the most delicious chicken I have ever eaten. The dish cooked by the boss is absolutely amazing." Zhao Du almost cried. The members of the table marveled, shaking their heads, while the eyes of several people at the white dining table on the other side were about to bulge. They seemed to become frowning rocks at this moment, looking straight at the chicken in their bowls and swallowing uncontrollably. "It seems very delicious." One of the men glanced at his companion. "What, don't you smell the fragrance? It must be extremely delicious." "Manager, what should I do? I would like to eat." Xiao's eyes were fixed on the chicken and she said in a touching tone. The manager opposite to her also looked at there. He swallowed after her words and the sound was so clearly, just like taking a sip of water. Finally, he looked back to Xiao and said bitterly, "We are not members. Right, we aren't members." Xiao was full of disappointment. She felt the most desperate thing in the world at this moment was that she could not eat delicious food though it was just in front of her. Apart from her, the men who sat here considered if a naked woman was together with a piece of chicken, they would not hesitate to rush at the chicken. But it was impossible. They could not taste the chicken here. They were grief and upset. All of a sudden, the manager's eyes brightened. He looked at Xiao and said after a break, "Go to our restaurant and bring a braised chicken." "Ah, okay." Xiao got up quickly and returned to the restaurant to take a braised chicken. After placing it on the dining table, the 2 picked a chicken drumstick each with their eyes fixed on the braised chicken on the members' table, imagining that they were eating the braised chicken cooked by the boss. Look at plums to quench the thirst, it was completely presented. But it was proved to be fake. The braised chicken, which was delicious before the manager came to this restaurant, had a nasty taste at this moment. It was not a patch on the egg fried rice and noodle soup in his plate. Well, the manager sighed and put the drumstick back, eating the egg fried rice silently. Xiao, who was a little better than him, clenched her eyes tightly and bit the braised chicken, fantasizing about the feeling of enjoying the chicken here, but swallowing hard after chewing a few mouthfuls. "Manager, this braised chicken seems to be wasted." Xiao put the drumstick back and sighed softly. "Stop talking, just eat." The manager did not even look at the braised chicken and started eating noodle soup. At that time, he felt a bit miserable for not being a member. What shall they do? Chapter 107 Show no respect. While Liang Mengkai and others were just having dinner, it finally came to the blonde man's turn. On entering the restaurant, he was shocked. "Is it braised chicken?" It smells good. What kind of chicken is this? The man with blonde hair named Pearson. He was in the catering department, which was admittedly unpromising, but he was interested in it, sparing no efforts at university. He came out in front of the study of catering, catering management, cooking techniques, nutritional diet, pastry making, and food reviews in his year. He had been working for Michelin for 5 years since he was directly recommended by his university after graduation. He had been to every famous place in the world and even among the food agents. He was an authoritative figure. The more authoritative he was, the stricter he became. He worked conscientiously, having the ability to distinguish between well-cooked and poorly cooked food. Besides, he could explain why it was delicious or not. In the past 5 years, he recommended dozens of Michelin-starred restaurants and disqualified more than a dozen Michelin restaurants. He was really loved and hated by people. In Zhang Han's restaurant, however, he was completely stunned and felt that he knew nothing at all. The egg fried rice was so savory, and he did not why the noodles in noodle soup were as fine as hair and tasted fantastic. Furthermore, he drank 3 cups of milk at noon on account of its fragrance. It was the thing that happened to him for the first time. Now, his stomach could not help growling when he smelled the aroma of chicken in the air. It smelt so good, it was too exaggerating. What kind of chicken is it? Pearson said involuntarily. How can it be so fragrant? Is it an Australorp? Or is it a breast chicken? Australorp was introduced from Italy during the period of the Republic of China. It had black and shiny feathers, black beak, shins and toes. Its soles of the feet were white and wings were strong enough to fly. It was good in quality and was delicious. Breast chicken was a kind of chicken produced in the Bresse region of eastern France. It had the bright red crest, white feathers and blue steel feet, whose color was similar to the French flag. Therefore, it was reputed as France's national chicken. It was recognized as the chicken of the best quality in the world. The dominant character was its tender meat, which was soft and juicy, as if it were about to melt. There were some chickens that were famous for their fragrance now, of which only a few were better. However, it seemed that neither Australorp nor breast chicken had the same fragrance as the chicken in the restaurant. At this time, Zhao Feng reluctantly ate the last piece of chicken. After hearing the man's words, he turned to him and said, "This is just a common native chicken. No way." Pearson arched an eyebrow. He was serious about professional knowledge, so he retorted, "I'm very clear about the taste of native chickens. This kind of chicken's flavor is not strong but slightly introverted, but the scent in the air is heavy. There are 3 ways for the fragrance to waft, respectively: the Maillard reaction between amino acids and reducing sugars, the thermal decomposition of fat." Pearson had studied about chicken's flavor before, so he could drone on for 10 minutes. But some other people were reluctant to listen to his long speech. "Brother, what are you doing?" The man sat opposite Pearson at noon reminded him again. "My friend is still waiting in line behind you. Do you want to eat? If not, let my friend sit here first." The man said rudely, pointing to the unoccupied seat on his opposite side. Pearson's facial muscles froze. He received malice in this restaurant, not only from the boss but also from other diners. Why? Didn't non-members have human rights here? People had to demean themselves to have a meal. How did that happen? Regardless of the bad service of the restaurant, Pearson was particularly uncomfortable seeing that other people were in full agreement with the man's words. Pearson shrugged his shoulders and said, curling his lip, "Of course, I want to eat." Pearson went straight to the kitchen bar after he finished. "I should sample both egg fried rice and noodle soup carefully again." Pearson filled his plate with egg fried rice and noodle soup and walked back to his seat. He ate a mouthful of egg fried rice at first. That's correct. Pearson enjoyed a mouthful of rice, narrowing his eyes. Then he filled a spoonful of clear soup. When he drank it, he exclaimed, "Oh, delicious. The noodles are really tough and chewy." Pearson began to enjoy his dinner, but as he ate, His eyes converged on Yang Mengkai's side again. The chicken in their bowls was almost eaten at this time. Even Zhao Du, who ate slower, was robbed of 2 pieces of chicken, one by Yu Qingqing and the other one by Liang Mengkai. I don't know what the chicken tastes like, if I could sample one, so. An idea suddenly hit Pearson, which was getting stronger and stronger. Finally, Pearson couldn't resist standing up and walking over to the members' table. Excuse me, is this chicken and other dishes only for members? Pearson was slightly incoherent and could not find a good starting point to ask. Isn't the rule written on the door? Zhao Feng frowned slightly and said, glancing at him. It seemed that the man had a lot of things to do in the restaurant. The restaurant ranked second in Zhao Feng's heart at present. The first was his undercover operation to defeat Tang Sun. If someone dared rock the boat in the restaurant, he did not mind letting him know how his nicknamed maniac came from. Perhaps because of his deterrent force or his acidness, Pearson was a little awkward. After thinking for a while, he said, may I ask, is there any other way to sample the food for members, such as paying more? Members' dishes are only for themselves. If you want to eat, you can buy a membership. Zhao Feng said coolly. Hearing it, Liang Mengkai's eyes brightened. She said, yeah, just buy a membership, and I can go upstairs to call the boss. For Liang Mengkai, she had always been curious about Meng Meng's mother. In addition to curiosity, she also wanted to measure with her. She was quite confident about her beauty. Moreover, she was curious about the relationship between Zhang Han and Meng Meng's mother. Did they divorce or not? She knew Zhang Han's temperament, that he definitely did not lie. The boss said he was unmarried before, so there must be some secrets. If the boss and the landlady had a good relationship and a nice family, Liang Mengkai would not say any more. On the contrary, if the two were divorced, Liang Mengkai did not mind marrying Zhang Han with a baby. This thought germinated with her after much deliberation. She could go after the things she liked. What was she afraid of? At present, she heard Pearson's question. If he applied for a membership card, she could take the opportunity to go up and have a look. Membership card, I can't afford it. Pearson scratched his head and replied. Oh, then you can't eat, it is the rule. Liang Mengkai curled her lips and said. They continued to eat and no one paid any attention to Pearson, which made him feel so embarrassed. Pearson hesitated for a while, finally gritted his teeth and said, I am A.Orme, I want to taste the boss's dishes. I think my evaluation will bring fame and gain to him. However, Zhao Feng and others did not listen to him anymore, while several people at the white dining table on the back side chuckled seeing him. I'm a gourmet, too. I also want to have a try. I'm a scientist. I also want to try the boss's food and analyze the structure of such delicious food. Ha ha, it's so hilarious. You can bring fame and wealth to the boss. Do you think the boss needs them? Can't you see that the restaurant only opens for 3 hours a day? If it were open all day, it could do a roaring trade. A few words left Pearson speechless. Pearson was filled with mixed feelings. He blushed and said firmly after taking a deep breath, I, Pearson, am a food agent of Michelin-starred restaurants. Although his job was a secret, he deemed that it did not matter to reveal his identity if he could enjoy the dishes here. For fairness, in the last resort, he did not rate for this restaurant any longer. He believed that if it rated by others, it would also receive favorable comments. After saying that, Pearson waited for people's exclamation. But after a moment of silence, a burst of laughter passed over. What is Michelin? Can I eat it? A man at the white table played a joke on him. So what if you're a food agent? Do you think this restaurant needs the title of Michelin? A few words shocked him instantly. He had never expected that these people show no respect for the title of Michelin. Fortunately, Liang Mengkai and other members of the table did not say anything, otherwise, Pearson would begin to suspect his life. The members who were acquainted with Michelin, especially Sun Ming and Wang Qiang, took a strange look at the person. They knew that getting a Michelin star rating not only could raise the restaurant's reputation, but also could help it gain wealth, but they did not say much. They were all aware that this restaurant's owner was not in accordance with a normal person, so Michelin might not be attractive to him. Liang Mengkai's eyes, however, lit up after hearing what he said. She quickly got up and said, "You're a food agent, why didn't you tell me before? I'll call the boss." Liang Mengkai's words made Pearson much more comfortable and also made him feel his sense of place in this restaurant for the first time. It was always better not to be ignored. Soon, Liang Mengkai walked to the second floor. When she stepped onto the stairs, she combed her hair and felt slightly nervous. Chapter 108 Live here? It was as if a daughter-in-law went to see her mother-in-law and there were beasts on the second floor. Liang Mengkai's heart unconsciously beat faster. She seemed to have heard the laughter upstairs and a crisp female voice except for Zif and Zhang Li as she went up. It was time to see Meng Meng's mother in her true colors. Liang Mengkai murmured, but when she just walked halfway, she saw a figure suddenly appearing onto the landing on the second floor. Liang Mengkai calmed down and took a look at the person. Spontaneously, she raised her lips and said, "Boss, what are you doing here?" Zhang Han was in a daze. What did she mean? What was he doing here? "I'm going to go downstairs to get a glass of milk." Zhang Han replied with a chuckle. "Oh." Liang Mengkai nodded and said, "Fine, there is a foreigner downstairs who is a food agent of Michelin and wants to taste the dishes. He came here for lunch, devouring the food with rice on his face. Ha ha." Liang Mengkai felt amused and laughed as she said. Zhang Han, however, was not surprised. Coming downstairs indifferently, he also saw the blonde man on the first floor. Pearson unwittingly showed arrogance to Zhang Han after seeing him. He said flatly, "Well, hello, boss, let me introduce myself. My name is Pearson and I am Michelin's food agent." When he was speaking, Pearson looked at Zhang Han furtively, intending to see Zhang Han's astoundment and a show of politeness. Pearson felt refreshed at the thought of this. The treatment in this restaurant made him really uncomfortable. Once the boss knew his identity and wanted to suck up, he should be reserved. Nevertheless, Zhang Han merely said. He then walked to the bar, poured a glass of milk, turned to go upstairs, and disappeared in the stairs. The whole set of movements was not sloppy at all. He just glanced at Pearson when he introduced himself at the beginning. Then, there was no follow-up. "I, you, he." Pearson was at a loss at this moment. He stretched out his hand to Zhang Han, supposing to detain him, but failed. After Zhang Han disappeared, the shock and disbelief of Pearson turned into depression in the end. Liang Mengkai could not help laughing after seeing his appearance. She said, "You'd better go back to eat honestly. It is estimated that even the top management of Michelin came here. The boss won't answer, let alone you." "Oh no, how come?" Pearson sadly walked to his seat. Just then, Sun Ming, who was eating in silence, gave a little cough. He said, "Mr. Pearson, I still have 2 pieces of chicken, just take them and have a try." Despite Zhang Han ignoring Pearson, Sun Ming was inclined to commerce, for he was engaged in trade. From whatever point of view, the favorable comments of Michelin's food agent were good for the restaurant, so he tried hard to hold back his desire to give up 2 pieces of chicken. Meanwhile, he found it a little funny because he did not like eating ordinary chicken very much, but in this restaurant, probably no one could fight the urge. "Ah?" Pearson was stunned. Then he nodded with exultancy and said, "Well, thank you, sir." Pearson grabbed a paper plate and a pair of chopsticks while talking and picked up the 2 pieces of chicken. Liang Mengkai and some other people stared at him when he returned to his seat. "Yo, his eyes are almost in." Zhao Du snorted softly, "Orme, please have a try." "Oh." Pearson recovered. He nodded and smiled. With the preciseness on his face, he said, "A dish is required to have a perfect combination of color, aroma and taste. Let's talk about the color first. Its reddish-brown made in soy sauce is well qualified. The color is neither too dark nor too light. Only by virtue of its appearance, we can see that the chef has a good grasp on the amount of seasoning. As for the aroma, just like what I said just now, it is full-flavored and fascinating. If 100 points is a full score, I will give it 100 in terms of its color and 110 in terms of the aroma, because it is too fragrant. As regards the taste, Pearson put the chicken into his mouth while speaking and tasted it with his eyes closed. However, why did he chew faster and faster? After a few bites, he finished eating the first piece of chicken, then picked up the second piece. He was like a rabbit, eating it quickly. 10 seconds later, the second piece was eaten up. Oh! Pearson let out his breath in a long exhalation with supreme enjoyment. How do you feel, brother? Yu Qingqing asked with a smile. Very, very good. Pearson looked over and his eyes were filled with amazement. He said, "This chicken is the most delicious I've ever tasted. It tastes better than other kinds of chickens such as Australorp, Brus chicken, Rhode Island red chicken and so on. It's incredible. How can it be the three yellow chicken? Why? Don't ask why." Zhao Feng shook his head slightly and said, "We have all seen the native chickens raised by the boss. They are indeed the three yellow chickens. As for why they taste so good, we have no idea. Perhaps the boss is a highly skilled cook." No. Pearson shook his head repeatedly and said, "He is definitely good at cooking, but this dish cannot be made by cooking alone. So, what's your score on the taste?" Liang Mengkai asked, blinking her big eyes. "Its taste." Pearson bowed his head and pondered for a moment. When he looked up, he said with his eyes full of affirmation, "If 100 points is a full score, I'll give 1,000 points for this chicken." Several people including Liang Mengkai smiled and shook their heads. They did not know how incredible it was to get this score from Pearson. Pearson had planned to comment more, since his identity was revealed. It was just as well say a little more, but, "Brother, my friend has been waiting in line for half a day. Do you eat or not?" "All right." Pearson's comment was an episode of life. Zhang Han certainly did not care about the evaluation of Michelin stars. It went without saying that the restaurant would not exist without Meng Meng and people would not have an opportunity to taste such delicious food. The restaurant was open until 8 o'clock in the evening. The one more hour was because there were too many people. Even when the people queuing up to enter the restaurant saw that the egg fried rice and noodle soup were not enough, they forced themselves to endure greediness and took less, because they understood food aficionados. If they could not enjoy delicious food after waiting in line for an hour, they would feel really depressed. The ending of the dinner, therefore, was perfect. Almost everyone tried the noodle soup which was newly listed in the restaurant. Zhao Feng cleaned up the first floor until 8:30. He hailed Zhif and Zhang Li who were watching TV on the first floor and then left. Zhang Li. Zhif glanced at the desktop of the counter, where there was a thick pile of money. She said with curiosity, "Let's check how much money we made in the evening?" "Okay, let's go." Zhang Li's eyes lit up. The two gathered together, divided it equally and checked it up. Auntie Fei, Auntie Lilai. What are you doing? Papa, quick, there were thieves. Meng Meng walked down with small steps and waved her small arms when she saw them checking the money. Xian together with Zhang Han walked down behind Meng Meng and burst out laughing after seeing Meng Meng's gesture, which was like protecting her food. "Meng Meng, we are helping your daddy audit for free." Zif could not resist replying, but she forgot the number all of a sudden. She patted on her forehead and said, "Ouch, my little ancestors, I forgot the gross." Zif, therefore, had to start anew. Finally, a few minutes later, Zif exhaled a long breath and said, "I'm done. It's 21,200 yuan. Lilai, how much do you have?" 23,100 yuan. Zhang Li raised the pile of money in her hand and waved it. "Wow! 21,200 plus 23,100 is 44,300. Oh, my God, brother-in-law, you earned more than 44,000 one night. You're so awesome, it's easy for you to earn 1 million a month. Zif said with exaggerated expressions. Come on, stop fussing. Ziyan gave her an angry stare. Ha, elder sister Yan, I'm happy for I have an awesome brother-in-law. Zif put the money on the counter, smiled and walked towards her. I think your mouth should be sewn on. Ziyan snorted softly. She was accustomed to calling Zhang Han brother-in-law. In fact, she was not with him yet. Zhang Li, who was at the bar, casually put the money in the drawer and stepped to the back of the sofa, saying, Brother, it's almost 8:30. I have to go back to work. Oh, go back and drive slowly. Zhang Han nodded his head. Well, then I'll go back. Fei sister-in-law, Meng. Bye-bye. Zhang Li said goodbye to everyone. Wait, I'll go too, you can give me a ride. Zif quickly stood up and said, Elder sister Yan, you just live here on your own, I'm too tired to sleep beside you. Zif was also used to sleeping alone. She could toss and turn casually. It was uncomfortable to share a bed with others. Live here on my own? Ziyan froze for a while, then she felt bashful with a coy expression. Sleep here on my own? How can this work? How can I live here with no clear reason? No way. Zhang Han has not pursued me yet. Ziyan looked at Zhang Han secretly, thinking for a moment, then said hesitantly, we'll have to work tomorrow morning, so I may as well go back too. Chapter 109 Comparisons are odious. In general, it was Ziyan who decided what to do, such as where to eat and what to eat at night. But now, Ziyan could not make up her mind with awkwardness climbing up on her cheek. She did not know what to do. Should she stay or leave? No, Mama, I won't let you go. You should be here with me. Meng immediately adopted a delicate and touching look. Her big eyes were full of unwillingness. The little princess did not want her Mama to leave. Well, your mother will stay here to accompany you. Zif chuckled and said, Elder sister Yan, don't refuse it, it's not a big deal to live here. Zif now genuinely considered that it was good for Ziyan to live here, because she hoped that Ziyan and Zhang Han could be together, which was totally different from her previous thought. At one time Zif spoke ill of Zhang Han in presence of Ziyan. No way. Ziyan blushed slightly, her delicate cheeks were charming at this time. As soon as Zif saw her expression, she knew that Ziyan was shy. Considering there was nothing more to say, she said after a while, Oh, elder sister Yan, you can sleep with Meng in the master bedroom and brother-in-law sleep in the secondary bedroom. There is nothing inconvenient. Besides, no way. Ziyan said, shaking her head, we'd better all go back to Union Garden today. I'm just going to bring Meng some clothes for her clothes are not enough here. I think Meng can stay here for the time being. She wondered now that Zhang Han not only was willing to make Meng good meals but also took care of Meng carefully. She may as well not stop him. Moreover, putting Meng in charge of a babysitter made her more anxious, comparing to her daddy's care. As for herself, the relationship with Zhang Han was still unclear, so she could not persuade herself to live here in a dazed state. While Zhang Han, on hearing her words, nodded directly and said, It's okay, for him, as long as Ziyan promised to let Meng stay here, he was satisfied. He did not think of anything else. They all, therefore, left the restaurant together. Zhang Han drove Ziyan, Meng, and Zuf, while Zhang Li led the way ahead, driving his Maserati. One of the destinations was Causeway Bay and another was Eastern, so the two cars drove into separate ways after pulling out of New Moon Bay. Zhang Li was playing popular electric music in the car, following the dynamic rhythm. Her head nodded slightly. Driving the car bought by her brother and listening to the moving engine noise made her very happy. She happened to meet with Liana carrying a bag filled with fruits when she returned to the residential area. Suddenly catching sight of a brand new Maserati GT downstairs, Liana was a little curious about it. It was normal for luxury cars to attract attention wherever they were. but when she saw Zhang Li calmly got off and gracefully walked to the door to the flat, she was a little amazed. Lili. Liana called Zhang Li promptly. Ah? She smiled after seeing Liana and said, Anna, did you go to buy fruits? Liana walked towards her quickly and said hesitantly, Lili, your car. My brother bought it for me. Zhang Li was so proud. Although she had luxury cars which were worth tens of millions and many other cars in those days, none of them made her so amused, for it was the car her brother brought for her. Brother Zhang Han? Liana stuck out her tongue and said, Brother Zhang Han is so rich. Hey, my brother is gifted to make money. This car was bought with the money he earned these days. Zhang Li replied with a smile. Ah. Liana was stunned. To buy a multi-million-dollar car with the money earned in several days? It made her, an outstanding student, feel rather surprised and bewildered. After graduation, she earned more than 50,000 yuan a month and 600,000 yuan a year. It took her 5 years to buy this car. Moreover, it excluded living expenses. It was acknowledged that the living expenses in Hong Kong were not low. What does your brother do? How does he earn so much in a couple of days? Liana asked curiously. He is the owner of a restaurant. Zhang Li's spirits lifted on this subject. She said with her eyes aglow, Anna, you can't imagine how delicious the dishes cooked by my brother are. Beyond description. They're better than the food made by other famous chefs anyway. But a restaurant also can't make millions of dollars in a few days. Liana said. Why not? The top 10 membership cards, costing 1 million yuan each, were sold in a few days. These 10 helped him earn 10 million, while the following cards counted for 10 million yuan each. In addition, my brother's restaurant has a turnover of 30,000 to 40,000 yuan for a meal, and the net income can reach at least 1 million in a month. Zhang Li said proudly. She, being his younger sister, was also proud of her awesome brother. Ah, how expensive it is. The news somewhat frightened her. After giving her a crooked grin, Liana asked again, what kind of restaurant is your brother's? What cuisines does it offer? Egg fried rice and noodle soup are on sale now. By the way, is the milk we have drunk delicious? At my brother's restaurant, it costs 100 yuan a cup. Zhang Li replied, the food is very delicious anyway, and I'll take you to try next time. Okay, thank you, Lili. Liana smiled and said with a little admiration, Brother Zhang Han is really awesome. Lili, I indeed envy you for having such a good brother. By the way, have you seen Meng's mother? Yes. Zhang Li walked into the elevator with Liana and answered after pressing the floor button. She must be very nice looking. Meng doesn't look like brother Zhang Han. She must be like her mother. Liana said. She isn't just beautiful. My brother certainly has a flair for beauty. With regard to my sister-in-law, you may know her. She said with a mysterious smile on her face. I know. Who is it? Liana became more curious. She's... Zhang Li drew out the words. Oh dear, don't keep me guessing. Out with it, out with it. Liana said anxiously. I won't tell you. Zhang Li rolled her eyes, ran out of the elevator, opened the door, and went back to the bedroom to change clothes. Liana, however, first placed the fruits on the tea table casually, then quickly ran to Zhang Li's bedroom and threw Zhang Li down and frolicked with her on the bed. If you don't tell me, I won't let you go. Oh, come on, I'm late for work. Well, I tell you. Who's she? Liana looked straight at Zhang Li. She's... Zhang Li did not keep her guessing this time. She brought out 2 words directly after a short break. Xian. Who? Xian? Liana suddenly felt surprised. She was very familiar with this name but could not remember for a moment. Seeing her face, Zhang Li reminded, a few years ago. A thought flashed in her mind all of a sudden. Liana said, Xian, oh, my God, brother Zhang Han's wife turns out to be Xian. It's incredible, isn't it? So what? Zhang Li gave her a stare and said, My brother's former girlfriends were all absolutely stunning girls. He is together with Xian, so what? My brother is so outstanding. No, I didn't mean that. Brother Zhang Han is certainly excellent. Liana protruded her tongue and said, I'm just a little surprised. I haven't thought it is Xian, and she even has a child with brother Zhang Han. Ah, stop fussing. Zhang Li curled her lips and put on her clothes. Then she stood up and said, I'm going to work and you just stay amazed here. Oh, okay. Liana nodded in puzzlement. Her mind was imbued with the things about Xian. She remembered that 5 or 6 years ago, when Xian was about to reach the peak of her career, she secluded herself from the entertainment circle. It was difficult for people to understand. Since there was no news about Xian afterwards, people gradually paid attention to other people. The entertainment circle developed at a high speed within 5 years, which was enough for a new rookie king to appear. Xian, however, whose career had just taken off, had just been known by people, and was about to acquire the new rookie king, disappeared in less than half a year. It was indeed a pity in some people's view. Zhang Han drove his Bandu alone the next morning, while Zif drove the Mercedes with Xian and Meng Meng. It was already 7:20 when they reached the restaurant. By this time there were already plenty of people in line. Even Liang Mengkai and Zhao Feng were waiting silently in front of the door. Finally, under people's gazes, Zhang Han's car came into view. Huh? Why a Mercedes follow him? Yu Qingqing said curiously. Did the boss go out last night? Zhao Du gossiped. Is that car behind belong to madam? Does she come here today? It should be. Zhao Feng said, nodding. Well, then I can see the madam with my own eyes. Liang Mengkai looked straight at the direction of the Mercedes. Zhang Han got off at first and stood to wait for a while. Soon, the door of the Mercedes opened. People had seen Zif, who got out of the cab, but in the back seat, a white and slender leg stepped down at first. It could be inferred that this lady was in a good shape by right of her long leg. Soon, as the sight went upward, people saw a light blue denim shorts drawing the outline of her good figure and a simple but beautiful white t-shirt. Then the crowd came out exclamations at times. Nice figure. It's so great. Soon, the madam got out of the car. As people looked up, they saw a delicate neck which satisfied them, her thin and sexy red lips, flawless cheeks, small but exquisite nose and ears all showed the meaning of beauty. When looked up a little more, they could not see anything. Her eyes were covered by a lowered cap, which made people feel pity uncontrollably. She looks really beautiful. Yu Qingqing said vacantly. Of course. Zhao Feng gave a simple response. If the madam was not beautiful, who was? Soon, the madam, holding Meng Meng, like an obedient wife, followed Zhang Han to the door of the restaurant. Good morning, boss. Good morning, Meng Meng. Liang Mengkai hurried over and greeted to the first two, then she looked straight at Xian and said, Good morning, madam. The comeliness was not enough to persuade Liang Mengkai to give up. The eyes were the window of the mind, and it was very important to have beautiful eyes. She wanted to see Xian's complete face by her greeting. Xian, after all, raised her head in the face of her greeting. She blinked her bright eyes, peering at Liang Mengkai. She vaguely considered she was the little sister Meng Meng referred to by virtue of a woman's sixth sense. A girl fell in love with Zhang Han. Xian looked at Liang Mengkai with her eyes shining. She gave a smile which was very rare and replied, Hello. The simple 2 words let out her sweet voice. Liang Mengkai, however, was absent-minded, fully seeing Xian's eyes. Her big eyes were both clear and bright. At this moment, Liang Mengkai felt that she failed. She indeed could not compare with the madam on appearance. She was a little disappointed at the thought. Fortunately, Xian just said hello and went in with Zhang Han, following 6 non-members too. Let's go in, too. Zhao Du said with a sigh, for he understood Liang Mengkai. Just then, Yu Qingqing standing beside them said in depression, Have you heard that? The madam's voice is so clear and sweet. Oh, we are both women. Why her voice seems to be kissed by an angel. but mine is gnawed by a dog. Comparisons are odious. Chapter 110. Here Li Fan came. Don't belittle yourself, King. I love your gruff voice. Zhao Du gently patted Yu King on her shoulder. Get out. Yu King punched in Zhao Du's shoulder. Although she did not exert all her strength, Zhao Du still stepped backward. Ah, why did you hit me? Zhao Du said pitifully. You bitch deserves a whacking. Yu King waved her fist and stepped into the restaurant. The crowd entered the restaurant and sat down. Liang Mengkai was a little absent-minded. Although she did not want to admit she lost in appearance, she sensed clearly that Meng's mother indeed looked better than her. Well, Liang Mengkai sighed lightly as Xian's beautiful eyes flashed in her mind. She's gorgeous. Liang Mengkai pouted. Who are you talking about? Yu King did a double take. Madam, she is more beautiful than me. Liang Mengkai said in a somewhat lost tone. Oh, I didn't see her clearly just now, she seemed like a super pretty woman. Yu King agreed. You also think she looks better than me, don't you? Liang Mengkai curled her lips. Yu King grinned and said, not really. The instant she was going to explain, Zhao Feng on the opposite side coughed softly. He could not bear to see Liang Mengkai's depression, but he was glad at the same time. The reason was self-evident. So he answered, Mengkai, you're also wonderful, beautiful as Madame Maz. She isn't attractive to anyone. Maybe some people deem that you are better than her. Really? Liang Mengkai's depression was relieved to some extent. Of course, from my point of view, you are as beautiful as Madame. Zhao Feng nodded his head. It's none of your business, you're annoying. Liang Mengkai rolled her eyes at him. Zhao Feng felt embarrassed, shaking his head with a wry smile. But after his comfort, Liang Mengkai was much more relaxed. She was in a trance and said, why I am vaguely familiar with Madame. I feel that I have seen her somewhere. King, do you think so? No. Yu King answered outright. Don't be too nervous, Mengkai. Perhaps you have seen a beautiful woman similar to Madame. Zhao Du said. Well, that's true. Liang Mengkai mumbled. She did not see Madame's face clearly but just remembered her bright big eyes since they just glanced at each other. While Zhao Feng shook his head, smiling. Of course, Liang Mengkai was acquainted with Madame. After all, she was Xian, who was famous in those years, so it seemed weird if Liang Mengkai was not familiar with her. Breakfast in the restaurant was as usual. People lined up one after another and Zhang Han was making breakfast in the kitchen. Moreover, Sun Ming also brought gifts to Meng every day, which made Meng have a certain fondness for this affable uncle. Wang Qing and Wu Liying came to hear every meal as well, apart from bringing their grandson that time. They did not bring anyone else. Who had changed most was Sun Dongying. Now he was willing to work hard in the company and accompany Sun Ming whenever at his leisure, which gratified Sun Ming. He was so glad to witness his son's changes in the last period of his life. On this day, however, there were two other people who were happier than Sun Ming. They were Li Fan and Xian, who were going to Zhang Han's restaurant. Shall I wear this suit? Is it formal? Xian asked, dressed in a black leisure suit. Fine, it's quite good. Li Fan answered casually, and then said, is my newly bought suit okay? Do you think this blue tie matches? It's okay, it's almost 9 o'clock. Let's go now? Let's go. The two dressed up seriously as if they had gone to a blind date. Then they went out and drove a black Land Rover to Zhang Han's restaurant. We are almost there. The restaurant is right ahead. Look, that restaurant is there. Meng's casual restaurant, that is it? Li Fan drove the car into the parking space in front of the restaurant. My God. When they were about to get off the car, Xian patted his forehead vigorously. What's the matter? Li Fan stunned for a moment. It's the first time we come here, do we need to buy some presents? Ah, well, but, we don't know what Mr. Zhang likes and how to send them. Li Fan hesitated, wincing, and said, why don't we buy some fruit? I don't think Mr. Zhang is short of money. Sending other gifts may not catch his fancy, so just buy some fruit to show our kindness. I think so. Let's go there and buy some fruit. The two muttered for a moment and drove out. Li Fan bought 2 bags of fruit in the supermarket on the front side of the street, since he did not know how to select. He brought whatever at a high price under the introduction of the staff, such as imported bananas and imported apples. After getting into the car, Li Fan drove to the restaurant again. He parked the car and the two headed for the restaurant. They looked a little anxious when they were about to enter the restaurant. At 8:30, the diners in the restaurant left in succession. Xian and Zuf left earlier under people's gazes at 8 o'clock when they finished eating. In the meantime, they had an appointment to come over at night. They had no time at noon, for the album was about to be released and they would be really busy these days. While Zhao Feng, who was free in the morning, stayed in the restaurant and sat in his chair playing with his mobile phone. In fact, he was pondering how to deal with Tang Zan. From the beauty kept by Tang Zan, he knew there was a back room in the study of Tang Zan's number 78 mansion on New Moon Bay Road, which contained a lot of important things. She discovered it at the risk of life, so the news was very valuable. However, it is difficult to get into Tang Zan's well-protected mansion. Furthermore, Tang Zan hardly invited people to visit his mansion. Even if there was something important, it would be handled in the head office. Tang Zan had begun to suspect his identity recently, which seemed like a dangerous signal, so Zhao Feng had to dawdle in New Moon Bay temporarily for a period of time. Li Fan and Xian pushed the door and came in when he was in meditation. "We're not open now." Zhao Feng came to himself, looked up at the two persons and said coldly. The sign was right in a doorway. In general, people would see it before they came in. So there were few cases that customers entered the restaurant at the wrong time nowadays. "Oh, hello, I'm Li Fan." Li Fan considered he was Zhang Han after confronting with Zhao Feng. He, therefore, walked over with a huge smile on his face and even stretched out his hands on the way, attempting to shake hands with Zhao Feng. "I don't know you." Zhao Feng gave a bland response and wanted to ask if they were looking for the boss. Li Fan laughed before Zhao Feng asked, "Mr. Zhang, you do have short memories. I was the one who called you the day before yesterday and I come here to talk about the song with you. I'm not the boss. Are you looking for him?" Zhao Feng peered at Li Fan, stood up and said, after learning that the two men were to look for the boss, Zhao Feng's presented more amiable. "Boss, we are looking for Mr. Zhang Han." Li Fan winced, saying, "Then I'll call him for you, please wait for a while." Zhao Feng nodded and stepped directly towards the stairs. Zhang Han was busy doing Meng Meng's hair after helping her take a bath and dress. "Ok, Papa, you are so stupid, I've been sitting for so long, I'm really tired," Meng Meng said, pouting. The girl knew it would have been finished if Mama did the hair. "It will be okay soon, oh, darling, don't move." Zhang Han chuckled and said. He had learned to tie plaits for Meng Meng, but it also took time to practice. Zhang Han wanted to tie more beautiful and complicated braids the first time, so he spent a little more time. My little buttocks are almost numb," Meng Meng said with a snort. All right, it's almost done." The last step. Zhang Han changed his position, sat in front of Meng Meng, combed her fringe and hooked her hair with a small flower pin. "Come on, how's this hairdo?" Zhang Han held Meng Meng and came to the mirror. "Ah!" Meng Meng was totally shocked when she saw her hairstyle. The hairstyle was still similar to Mickey Mouse's, except that 2 balls of hair were looser, with larger circles, and her hair was divided at the side, which fully showed Meng Meng's lovely and beautiful cheeks. Meng Meng was very happy when she caught sight of herself in the mirror, asking childishly, "Is the little princess inside really me?" "Yes, the little princess is Meng Meng," Zhang Han said with a smile. "Ho ho, Meng Meng has turned into a little princess. Papa is so great." Meng Meng hugged Zhang Han's neck jauntily and kissed him several times on the cheek. Ha, ha, ha. Zhang Han burst out laughing. The happiest moment he thought was when Meng Meng kissed his face happily. It was a kind of psychological satisfaction, genuine rejoicing. Papa is the best, Meng Meng is so beautiful, ho ho. Just as the laughter was overflowing on the second floor, Zhao Feng came up and felt a warmth in his heart in such atmosphere after seeing this scene. The father's love is like a mountain. Awesome as the boss is, he can do anything in front of his daughter. He's indeed great. Zhao Feng deemed that sometimes redoubtable fathers may also be severe because they hope their children could be stronger than themselves in the future. Therefore, strict education was indispensable for children to get ahead. This was human nature. But Zhao Feng saw another kind of paternal love from Zhang Han. Warm fondness. Under such circumstance, a slight mistake was likely to spoil the child. But it seemed that the boss had never considered this matter. Zhao Feng shook his head slightly and stopped thinking about these. He looked at Zhang Han and laughed. Boss, there are 2 people downstairs looking for you to talk about the song. Oh. Zhang Han nodded, holding Meng Meng, and went to the first floor with Zhao Feng.